Alright, hello once again, this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD 1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class, I'm doing a series of video presentations based on the book for the class, which is Pro ASP.NET MVC 5. It's an A-Press text by Adam Freeman. I'm near the beginning, or in the beginning part of Chapter 7 of the text. And where I left off last time, we had just come in and basically set up a mock repository where we have put in our different products. Alright? So we're up to displaying a list of products, which gets us right here, about halfway down on page 163. And the author says that he could spend the rest of the chapter building out the domain model and the repository, but kind of was afraid to bore you, so he's going to add that stuff on an as-needed type of basis. In this section, the author is going to create a controller and an action method that can display the details of the products in the repository. For the moment, it says this will be for only the data in the mock repository, but later we'll set it up, all right, to handle, our quote real data, unquote. We'll also be setting up an initial routing configuration so that MVC knows how to map requests for the application to the created controller. So we want to go back in, create an empty controller named product controller, and the initial contents are shown right here. We may have added this before, I don't remember. So let's go back to our UI. Under controllers, there's our product controller. Alright, this is the problem when I come in and start doing some stuff, and then I skip some stuff, and then I do some more stuff. One of the things this has made me realize is as I'm going through the chapters with the class, and we go through Chapter 6, where I went in and tried to use newer versions of products with NuGet. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use exactly what they use in the book. I think that's part of where I started to fall a little bit. Okay. All right. In addition to removing the index action method, we added a constructor. Remember, the constructor's always got the same name, okay, as the class, that declares a dependency on the iProduct repository interface. That was this right here. This will lead and inject to inject the dependency for the product repository when it instantiates the controller class. We also imported the sports score domain namespaces, abstract and entities that you can see right there, so that we're able to refer to the repository and model classes without having to qualify the name. Next, we've added an action method called list, which will render a view showing the complete list of products. So again, what's new in there, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want to make sure they're all in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks great. All right, so let's add let's come in here and add the new method, which is just our list method. And as it says, again, it's going to end up showing us a list of products in just a minute. Now, you have to realize this is something that has to make sense to you. That right now, notice it says public view result list, okay, and it's giving us an error right there. It says a namespace cannot directly contain members such as fields or methods. So it doesn't like what we're trying to do, and that's pretty obvious. All right. The author says calling a view like this tells the framework to render the default for the action method, passing a list of product objects to the view method provides the framework with the data it needs to populate the model. Now, we need to add the default view for the list action, so we're going to right mouse click on it. Alright, in the home controller, which I believe is where we should be. We are not, we are in a product controller. Ha! Product controller says that's where we should be. I don't know if this is an error or not, where that should say product controller. Notice using the product model class. List, empty, product, layout page. I'm going to try to do it from here. I believe that would be correct. Right mouse click. Right mouse click. Oh, well, one thing we didn't do here is this should be inside of here. Let me do that to start with. Well, that looks a little nicer. That was on me. Okay, in other words, my list method was not inside of, it was not inside of the product controller. So now when I right mouse click, add view. List, empty without model. Well, before we do this, let's do a file, save all, and let's do a build solution. Now, why am I doing that? Sometimes when you come through here and do this, the system expects certain things to be set up, and unless you do the build, they're not. So now I don't know if it's going to change or not, but add view, list, empty without model. Still isn't showing it there. That isn't good. On here, it shows us the model class product. Okay? And it's not allowing me to do that. List, well, maybe if I, is it empty right now? No. List, empty, there we go. Model class, product, sports score, domain entities, and use a layout page. Nothing about referencing the libraries, use a layout page. So before I click add, let's just double check. When you click the add button, the author says right here, when you click the add button, Visual Studio will create the list.cshtml file and also create an underscore viewstart file and a shared, under the shared folder, an underscore layout.cshtml file. This is a helpful feature, but in keeping with the Microsoft approach, the underscore layout.cshtml contains template content that we don't want or need, so we're going to have to make changes to it. Alright, so come in here, click add. What we're going to notice is under views, right now product is empty. And no, it's not. We've got list.cshtml in there right now. Okay. So we want to edit the underscore layout.cs HTML file next. There it is. Okay. And I'm going to remove everything that's in there and replace it with what the author has provided for us here. As always, don't let yourself, get worked up if we get an error here. It is not complete. Got to go on to the next page here and add the rest. All right, that should be fine now. All right. Although I set the model type of the view to be the product class, I actually want to work with an IEnumerable product. So again, later, we're going to end up putting in database data, but for now, we're using the information that we put into the interface. All right, the IEnumerable product is what the product controller obtains from the repository and passes to the view. In listing 7.9, you can see that I have edited the model expression. All right, so we're going to edit the list.cs HTML file, and we're going to change it to this. Not much in it right now. Okay. It's right now giving us an error right here, and hopefully it says the type decimal is defined in the assembly that is not referenced. You must add a reference to the assembly. Well, I'm hoping it's one of those errors that'll kind of flush itself out when we go in to run the program, but we'll see. I also changed the title of the page to products. Note that we do not need to use the razor @ expression to display the view data. This is because each of the content lines in the code body either is a razor directive or starts with an HTML element. All right. The author says that they've converted the price to a string, which renders the numerical value as currency according to the culture settings. Yeah, I don't see where that's a real big thing one way or the other, to be honest with you. All right, I need to tell, we're up to 13 minutes, so let's check this default. Let's set the default route, and then we'll see if we can run the application. We may run over a minute or two on this one, but I'd like to get to that point. Then we'll be ready to prepare the database. I need to tell the MVC framework that it should send requests that arrive for the root URL of my application to the list action method. We can do this by editing the statement in register routes in app start as shown. So it's the default that's in here in app start. I'm sorry, in route config, which is in app start. So route config, there's our default statement, which, as you know, by default is right there. So we're replacing it with this. Okay, that seems to have cleared everything up. We'll see in just a moment. Another good time to do a file save all. Alright, you can see the changes in bold. We changed home to product and we changed index to list, meaning by default, if we don't tell it otherwise, it's going to use the product controller, which is good because that's the only one we have. And by default, it's going to call the list method. Okay. Notice that I've set the value of the controller to be product and not product controller, which is the name of the class. This is part of the MVC naming scheme. Alright, I have all the basics in place. I have a controller with an action method that will call the default URL requested. That action method relies on the mock implementation, which generates some sample test data. The controller passes the test data to the view associated with the action method, and what we should get is a listing of our data. All right. And see the result by running the app as shown in Figure 7.6. If you don't get the result, check that you have navigated to the root URL and not one that targets another action. So let's go back in. I know I've done this very recently, but I'm still going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run the program again. And ideally, once we run this, we're going to get something that looks like this. Not very much so far as aesthetically pleasing, but that's okay. Alright, looks like we've got that compilation error, the same thing we talked about earlier. Okay, the type decimal is defined in an assembly that is not referenced. You must add a reference to assembly, net standard, etc. So let's do this. I'm getting real high here on time, but I do want, hopefully I want this to, well, I do want this to work. So let's stop the run. And let's see if we do come in here and reference, add reference. Assemblies. We want net standard. That doesn't look good because I don't see it in here. System net. I don't see it in here. Very quickly going to search for it, but my guess is it's not going to find anything, and it doesn't. So I'm going to stop right here just because you can see exactly where I am in the program, and we'll see if we can fix this, and I'll be back to try in just a couple minutes.